to actually come, air their opinions, their perspective about what has been going on around them. Along with that, we also try to bring in certain youth icons who we think have had an extraordinary journey that can inspire and motivate others. So today we are actually on the latter track, where we have somebody who's joining us who is a young achiever, who has done varied things, and I must say has done very, very impressively well at them. He's somebody who's been a national swimmer. He's a graduate of the Stanford University. Along with that, he has represented his university in the rowing team, which by no means is a small feat, because as we all know, Stanford University is very, very well known for creating a lot of Olympians, which we also saw in the recent Olympics. Along with that, today he started a new journey, which is as an entrepreneur, where he is kickstarting a very interesting edutech venture called DSJ Keep Learning. So it's my privilege and my honor to welcome today's panelist and today's guest on our show today, Mr. Pranav Padode. Pranav, thank you so much for taking out the time from your schedule to join us today.
Thanks a lot, Kritika. I hope I'm audible and everything's good on this side. Thank you for a very kind introduction and those warm words. I'm kind of humbled to be on this. I've been following VUTV for a while, so it's exciting to be here.
I'm so happy to hear that. And yes, your audio and video is absolutely perfect. So to all my attendees who are joining us today, also all of our viewers and subscribers who are joining us on a social media platform, our team is picking up questions from the various platforms that we are showcasing this episode on. So make sure you're sending us a lot of questions, and I'd love to integrate the same in my conversation with Pranav today. I'm sure you're as excited and eager to know about his journey and how he has been making a lot of these different decisions in his life. So I think let's just jump straight right into this conversation. So Pranav, if you could tell us a bit about yourself and tell us also a little bit about what your journey has been from schooling in Bangalore to going to Stanford University and where you are today.
Okay, so that's a load full to answer, but I'm going to try my best to justify it and condense it in the next 2-3 minutes. I've lived in Bangalore all my life. I actually went to a pretty normal convent school called Bishop Cotton Boys, and while I was in school, I kind of spent a lot of my time swimming. I was trying to make it to the state team and national team at that point, and I also had a lot of other hobbies. I was interested in robotics. I was interested in aero modeling. I was a fairly good student, you could say, in academics also. And I had an interesting schedule where we would train in the morning and evening in swimming. And I think the first big landmark that came to me in my life was in the 10th grade, when I had to make a decision between pursuing a career in my sport or dropping my sport and pursuing a career in the area of engineering, like most traditional Indian students in that intersection go through. And I was very fortunate to have really supportive parents who were supportive of my sporting dreams, and they suggested the idea of me going to the US because that's one place. Unfortunately, as of now, we don't have the infrastructure in India. It's building, and it's building at a good pace, but we don't have the infrastructure in India where people are still okay with the with supporting a athlete and who's also inclined towards academics. It's a sad reality. So in 11th and 12th, my parents took the decision of putting me in an international school in Bangalore, and I was very fortunate to have a really good college counselor who also helped me with my college admissions process. And after a bit of a gruel from in the 11th and 12th grade, I was one of the lucky few to get into Stanford from India, and that was a no-brainer choice for me because Stanford was one of my dream schools for the longest time, mainly because I felt like I fit in there. The kind of ideal student of Stanford is somebody who does 1 plus something, and since I was the swimming plus academics type, that made the best sense for me to do. Um, I joined Stanford in 2015, where I did my undergraduate in electrical engineering. And during my time at Stanford, I tried to explore and discover myself as much as I could. So the first year I spent going through a pretty grueling swimming schedule and academics. And towards the end of the first year, I started hitting a the realization dawned upon me that maybe I'm not good enough to go to where I want to get in my swimming career. And towards the end of the first year, I finally took the decision to quit swimming, and I told myself that, look, I'm at Stanford now. If I couldn't make my swimming ambition, at least let me try to do my academic ambition. Unfortunately or fortunately, in my second year, the bug of sport again hit me, and I decided to try to walk onto the Stanford rowing team. And initially, I was rejected because Stanford's a Division One school in the US, and they don't necessarily, they have one of the best sporting teams in the country. So even though I was a national level athlete, and I had no experience in rowing, and I had no idea. I was obviously not at the level they wanted me to do to be at. So I spent about 3 months training myself and conditioning myself to walk onto the rowing team. And then, by a stroke of luck and I guess a little bit of a hard work, I was able to walk on to the Stanford rowing team. And for the next 2 years, I spent a significant part of my college life rowing for them, training with them in the morning, training with them in the evening, rowing at a few regattas. I also had the opportunity to win a few regattas, so it was a great feeling. And where do I stop this, Valerie? Do I stop this at the college part or post college also?
No, I mean, we would love to hear that, what you're doing right now in college, because I'll just give a very good context to everybody about where you are at today.
Okay, great. So while I was also rowing in college, I did have a bit of the entrepreneurial bug, and I wanted to try my hand at running a business. So me and my co-founder, who was based in Bits Pilani at that point, also tried to set up two businesses. And I think the biggest reason why we didn't pursue those two businesses was is he didn't want to drop his education at Bits Pilani, and I was having a good streak with rowing and academics at Stanford, and I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea of dropping out of college just to run a business. I mean, you can always wait for a year or two, unless you have something that's really golden. Unless it's a time bound business where you stepped on something and it's just flying. Otherwise, it's just a glorified myth that people have that all founders need to be young and stuff. So towards the last year of college, I was starting to look at my life a little more seriously and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I always wanted to start a business, but I also didn't want to lose the opportunity of working in the US at in consulting and probably one of the tech companies there. So I spent a lot of my time interviewing and collecting job offers. Feel free to stop me anytime, by the way, if you have questions. I felt, I spent my last year of college working on my job applications, trying to, pull up some job offers back then. And then something unfortunate happened in 2019. I lost my grandfather just as I was going to start working at PayPal, which is the company I finally decided to work at. And I came back to India to perform his last rites. And in that 1 week, I realized that there's no point. I mean, if I really wanted to run a business, there's really no point of me looking at going back to the US and doing a job and then putting the business part in the back of my head and saying that I'll run my business later. Like, one thing I've learned is if you want to do something, you should do it now. Otherwise, you'll never get to do it. You'll always keep pushing it to the back of your mind. So when I came back to India in 2019, I decided to quit my job, which I never technically started at PayPal. I was supposed to start. And I joined my father in my family business and tried to understand the education space in India. Education mainly for two factors. One is I think it's a high impact space and people can do a lot of good work in it. And there's a lot of stuff that's broken in it. And India is the largest population also. So it's a good market to be in. And education also because of my own personal experience. When I was in school and when I was trying to swim and when I was trying to study, I saw that there was a lot of resistance. And I always often question that, why is the system so bad that they don't allow you to do both? So that's kind of how I got into the education space. And then I spent about a year just working with my dad and understanding how education operates. And sometime in 2021, I decided to take the leap myself, and I shifted my life from Bangalore to Mumbai, and I set up the company that I'm currently working at or running.
Wow, that's really, really exciting. So I think now you've shared so many important facets of your journey till today. So now I'm going to break them down and ask you some really pinpointed questions from each of these facets, because I think what a lot of us today in the youth struggle with is decision making. And we want to use VUTV as a platform where we, actually share with everybody what is the process that a lot of people have been using and that actually works with them. So I think the first decision, I think what everybody would like to know about is, for example, engineering. How come you decided you wanted to be an engineer? I mean, you were a national level athlete. How did you discover your passion in engineering and you realized you wanted to make a career out of it? Why did you want to study it actually?
So it's a bit of a controversial answer, actually. A lot of people, there is this unnecessary pressure on students to discover themselves and figure out what they need at the earliest. I don't subscribe to that because I know a lot of 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 year olds today who still have no idea what they're doing in life. That being said, engineering for me was more of a best bet. And at that point, it was also something which I liked more than I liked the rest. So I mean, I came from all my childhood I spent tinkering with electronics, building robots, building aero models, studying science. They were my favorite subjects, working on computers. So it was a very natural progression for me to actually take an engineering path. And I think that's the biggest factor. If I was a person who was into history, I would have probably taken history. If I was a person who enjoyed geography and civics and the arts, I would have probably gotten into those areas. But it's because there is no, like, I mean, you don't truly discover yourself. It's a myth that people say that when I know exactly what I want in life, because life itself is very unexpected. And as you go on in life, new challenges come up and you start having to remold yourself according to those challenges. Like, for example, you may find an engineer who unfortunately will have to learn the arts because of some way life is taking them, right? So I think discovering yourself is a lifelong process. It's not something that you finish within 20 years and then you say, okay, this is what I'm doing for the next 70 years. Like, that doesn't happen. It's a lifelong process where you have to be in touch with yourself. And most of the decisions you take in life are very in the moment decisions. Like, this is the best path for me right now, so I'm going to take this. And I've got three options to choose. This is the best option for me, so I'm going to take this. There's If you work backwards and say, okay, I want to get here in 20 years, and to get here in 20 years I have to take these steps, I think that's a terrible way to approach life, because you don't know if you'll actually get there in 20 years. And there's no certainty you'll get there. There is no certainty that what you think about today is going to be there in 20 years. Like, the pandemic is a great example. I didn't think I was going to wear a mask in India for 2 years, right? So I think it's just an option of what, out of the opportunities I got, this seemed like the best to take. And I think most students should approach it that way.
And also, I think what you said, right? I mean, a lot of your like the bigger reason why you chose engineering was also because you realized you had an interest in it. So, like you said, you did some experience with robotics, some experience with aero modeling. So that kind of gave you an inkling into this is something that actually excites me, and I would like to study this further. So I think that is probably a good matrix. And for all the kids who are joining us and the students who are joining us, I think this is also probably something that we need to do a lot more is actually be more exploratory in nature. Try your hand at like different things, especially when you're young, because you never know what's going to click. I mean, only when you try will you get a good idea about what is it that's actually clicking with your nature, your interest, your passion, etc. So I mean, now that you figure out that okay, engineering was something that you wanted to study, so after that, how did you sort of decide, like in terms of college, that would you be applying in India or would you be applying abroad? Now, when it comes to applying abroad, how early did you start and what was your process? Because I think that'll be very helpful for the students who are joining us here today who hold similar aspirations like you and want to see themselves at Stanford.
Okay. My decision to apply abroad was out of necessity. Wasn't If I wasn't swimming, I would have much rather gone down the path of competitive exams and tried to write the IIT, the JEE mains, or the BITSAT, and try to get myself in one of those colleges. Um, I honestly, I know a lot of people don't subscribe to this mindset, but I think that the path that an IIT or a BITS shows you is pretty good. Like, as you can see, a lot of entrepreneurs in India seem to be coming from these institutes and doing a great job at it, right? So I think there's I mean, people often say you should go abroad versus studying in India. I tell them that you don't need to go abroad if you don't have any purpose for going abroad. If you're just going abroad because you think the experience is better, you should probably reevaluate your decision and look at universities in India. That being said, like I told you, mine was more of a case of necessity. And the one benchmark I set myself was, if I'm going to be spending X amount of money to go abroad, it better be worth it. Like an education abroad is not, it's not cheap. It's pretty expensive. It's a huge liability on your parents. It's a huge liability you carry on yourself, and student debt's a real problem. So um, like I said, in my case, like I was pretty certain that I'm going to go, if I'm going to go, I'm going to go to the best. And for me, my first calling or my first preference was always Stanford. Um, because it fit my character. So when you kind of look at colleges and universities, even in India, even abroad, every college and university is a living creature that has a living character, that has its own character. It has its own way of it. It has its own flavor of student body, which you can make out pretty quick. So if you look at Caltech, you need to be really smart to get into Caltech, and you know that most Caltech people are just interested in academics, right? But if you look at a Stanford, you would look at a more well-rounded personality where, yes, we are okay or we are good at academics, but we have other interests. And Stanford as a university allows you to pursue those other interests. If you look at something like a Harvard, it's a pretty set corporate path. You know you're going to an Ivy League because you want a corporate career. And that's what they're kind of known for the most. So I think the biggest choice that people should make when you go to university is, how does it fit your character? And if it fits, if you feel like it's your calling, then focusing on rankings and stuff is not really worth it. Because um, what is the ranking of a university? It's a magazine telling you this is the best university in the world, which is primarily determined by the alumni, by the research the university does. But as an undergrad student, how does it matter what research your university does? It's not really something that you're concerned about, right? You're more focused on, and if whether it is a Stanford or whether it is a Harvey Mudd or whether it is even some sort of like college like UIUC, the faculty is the same, the teaching is the same, the courses are the same. It's not going to change drastically, right? So your decision should be based along the lines of, is this someplace I see myself being in 4 years, and will I feel at home here? Regarding my like application process, I was fortunate to have a really great college counselor who I'm going to shamelessly advertise on this platform. His name is Prabjot Singh Khalsa. He was he was imperative in my college application process. He was the kind of person who managed everything for me. I was a person who went to an all boys convent school, and I had no idea what an SAT was. I had no idea what a what writing an essay is. So he was very important and very instrumental in that process to help me through it. And I started building my college profile pretty late, actually. I never started early. I started sometime in the 12th grade itself. And the reason I started in the 12th grade was, there is this misconception that a lot of counselors tell students, that there is a certain profile you have to create and you need to start early. You need to start in the ninth grade and seventh grade. And a lot of parents like go crazy over that and start forcing their kids to do random things like writing books.
So true. Yeah.
How believable is it for a 16-year-old who's going to school to be writing books?
Yeah.
You know that's not a normal thing kids do. Like normal kids like either do debates, elocution, or they're in some sort of sport, or they're in some sort of hobby. But very, very hard to believe that this child is starting an NGO at the age of 15, and this child is writing a book at 15. Like, come on, like even colleges know that you're doing that just to get in. So I started my college process late because my college counselor just told me that, boss, it is what it is. Like, you should do what you're doing and then hope that the university that you want to get into likes you. And that's only going to keep you happy, right? If you try to mold yourself into something you're not, you'll probably get into the place. You may fool the admissions officer, but you'll be miserable there for 4 years. And it's true, people at Stanford are miserable. There are people at Stanford who are miserable, who are depressed, who feel like they don't belong there for these reasons. So it's not worth it. And what's the point of staying 4 years there if like every month you need to walk into therapy and be like, oh, I hate this place, I can't relate to the people. Avoid yourself that problem.
Absolutely. So I'm going to pause you there, and I would definitely want to ask you this, because I think you're very correctly identified this to be an issue today, which is, there's so much of pressure on students, especially those who are applying abroad, that, they ask them that, for example, you should be an author also, you should be engaging in community social service as well. I see this budding culture that we see of entrepreneurs who are just from school, who are starting their ventures, and parents are pumping money into it. So I feel like it's a lot of pressure on students today, where they are being forced into like these kind of activities. And I want you to like break that myth, or probably tell us that how do like when you apply to college, uh, what is it that they're looking for? I mean, is it really important for you to be there everywhere, where they're looking for young entrepreneurs already who have started these successful ventures in school, or they're looking for young authors? What is it that they're looking for? And having said that, how do we prioritize activities? Like, is it necessary for a child to get pushed into so many different activities for a college app?
Okay, I'm going to start answering the question in a different way. Um, Oftentimes, what I've noticed is that your parents want to live their life through their child. So it's a parental ambition that my child, I wanted to go to Stanford, or I think Stanford is great, hence my child has to go to Stanford, right? Or I am an IIT and my kid has to go to IIT, right? It's a way of them actually living their own aspirations and their own things through their child, right? And at that point, as a 16-year-old, as a 17-year-old, you have to ask yourself that who's living your life? Is it your parent or is it you? So whose decision matters the most? Is it the parent's decision or is it the child's decision? Because I mean, sure, you'll get the tag, you'll go into the university, but then if you're miserable, what's the point? And your parents will eventually go miserable. Like they don't care if you're at Stanford. If you're sad, you're sad, right? So the first thing most kids should actually come to terms with is that it's their life, it's your decision, it's your path, right? And until you're not completely convinced with the direction you're taking, you probably shouldn't take it, right? There's no hurry in life to even go to college. Take a gap year. What's stopping you in life? It's better to take a gap year and figure out what the right choice is than to go into a choice and then regret it for 40 years, right? So first thing I would tell most people of my age and probably younger is first come to terms with what you want to do. Like, drown out the noise of others around you and try to figure out what you want to do, like what excites you, because that's the only thing that's going to take you forward is what excites you, nothing else, right? Your mom is not going to live your life through you, your dad's not going to live, it's just you, right? So the first, let's stop that. The second is, I don't think colleges care about you reading book, like writing books and stuff. I think what a college is really looking for is this person what they say they are. Like if Pranav Padode is applying to Stanford and I'm reading 3 essays about Pranav Padode, can I visualize a Pranav Padode in Stanford? Your SATs, your ACTs, your grades are just, I mean, you could say they're kind of like sanity checks, which is to say, okay, we want students who are in the 95th percentile. All right, just get a score above the 95th percentile and you're good. We want a student who's decently academically inclined, who can kind of stay in the university and not fail out of it. And we're looking at a student who has some sort of desire to do something, which is very evident through the work you do. Like if you actually have some sort of drive in you, or if you actually have some sort of ambition in you, you would have already taken steps to go there. They may be small scale, they don't have to be huge, they can be very small, but those are signs of uh, of a person who's actually interested in one area, right? Going back to our conversation again, a person is an author, is a computer programmer, runs an NGO, also as good as academics, is also a sports person. How many humans do you come across like that? Like most humans do one or two things at tops. And even a college officer knows that this person is just, BSing their way into college. So it's better to do one to two things that you're really passionate about and just be good at it and do it at your level, right? If you want to excel, just go to as far as you can excel. I mean, you also need to enjoy your childhood. You only have it once, right? So you might as well, that balance is very important to have. Like, The race of life shouldn't make you lose out on something beautiful in your childhood either. Like it makes, why do you want to spend all your childhood in like coaching classes?
Very true. I mean, thank you for debunking that myth. And I think you're right. I mean, the premise that you started with, that a lot of time parents are trying to live their dreams and aspirations through the life of their children. And that sort of creates a situation of pressure and, just a lot of, I'd say, stress for the students as well as stress at home because there are a lot of disagreements between the parents and the children. Since we are talking about it, I think you're going to be in a better place to tell us this, but the kind of pressure that we see that Indian students are facing when it comes to college apps, is it similar to what even your friends from other countries went through? I mean, is it a similar culture where they are also being pushed and pulled into these various directions for college apps, or are things a little more structured and a little more free there?
I think the first question people need to ask themselves is why even go to college? I don't understand. The first thing, like I honestly would want to question the future is why do we need to go to college? Is it because people have said that you'd need those 4 years to discover? I don't think so. I learned more working than I learned in college. Maybe some kids should just make the decision saying that we'll just skip college altogether and just start working. Right? Why even go to college? Like as society, we often don't even question the most basic things. Like if you were to ask a parent today, why should your child go to college? They will have no answer. Oh, but hota hai, jana padta hai. Right? There is no concrete idea of why somebody has to do a BTech or a BBA or a BE or something. Right? So like first before we even get into this conversation is why do people go to college? Is it to get a job? Is it to discover yourself? Is it to learn skills? Because it seems to be failing in all areas. A college degree doesn't get you a job all the time. Okay. Everybody criticizes colleges for having really outdated curriculums. And that's also one of the reasons why I started this company. We're trying to fight that problem. And the third thing is discovery is a lifelong process. You can't expect somebody in college to discover themselves. The only thing I think college actually provides a person is a safe space to discover yourself, where you're institutionally in an area where the institution tells you we will create a bubble around you and protect you from all the things that you do that would potentially harm you if you're out there in the real world in the process of discovering yourself. I think that's the most important part, and that as a thought is something that is creeping into places like the US, places like Europe, where people are questioning the basic idea of why do people go to college. Like in the US, you have community colleges. In Europe, you have similar concepts where people just go to have a general education requirement and get into working. So that is something. I mean, that's a very. I mean, it's a huge cultural bias, which I mean, people have to kind of figure out in life in general. And maybe if people take time out from their schedule when their kids are applying to college and ask the question like, why are we sending them to college? And that's my thought on this, right? I mean, uh, no, most people don't have an answer to this. That
Correct.
being said, yes, it is a little more liberal in Western countries when people are making college decisions because they're cognizant of these things. They're cognizant that I don't have to go to college. I can go to community college. I can work at a McDonald's, and then while I'm working at McDonald's, probably do some online courseware and grow, or I can do an online degree and just start working immediately. Uh, so yeah, I would say that it's true. I think in India it's more of a matter of prestige also that I have a degree, engineering kar raha hai, doctor kar raha hai. And I think that's a cultural bias that you can't change. Yes, it is very. I mean, in short, it is prevalent in our country, and you can't take away that pressure so soon.
Right. So, I mean, now while we've spoken about that, I think it's only fair because a lot of people do want to know about your experience in Stanford. So, if you can share with us, like, what was your experience like at Stanford? What is the culture at Stanford University like, which you think makes it actually stand out in front of the other colleges and universities that we have across the globe?
Um, okay, you think about it this way. Um, you make four walls. All right. In those four walls, you put every amenity and every resource you can possibly imagine in your life. And in that same area, you put in a bunch of individuals who are mildly driven. I won't say supremely driven, I would say mildly driven to do something in their life. That's what a Stanford environment is. All right. As a university, Stanford's an incubator for human beings. So they provide you, it's like a buffet. Oh, you want to be a researcher? We've got amenities for you to research. You want to be a athlete? We've got the best sporting ability, amenities. If you want to be a scholar, we've got the best library. If you just want to have fun, we have the best parties also on campus, right? So they kind of have, there's just a buffet given to you and saying that now you go on, kid, like figure out what you need to do. And since you are as an individual mildly driven, and I'm going to say supremely driven, it's a myth that everybody there is supremely driven, right? Since I am mildly driven, it just so happens I may fall into one of these amenities and be like, oh wow, like this is what I love, this is what I want to do, and I just get into it. And then thanks to like your drive, and also the fact that you have above average intelligence, and the fact that in the past you have demonstrated some sort of resilience before you gone into university, that stuff just takes over and then you find your way. That's really just about all Stanford does. And the same thing can be done in India also. You don't need a Stanford to do that. Any university in India can do this. They just have to have proper labs, proper faculty, and they need to give children inside that university the freedom to explore it, right? The freedom to use it, the freedom to do it. And automatically out of those 100 kids, 90 will be normal. They will be like, but the 10% that come out will be exceptional, because they had the freedom to kind of discover what they wanted, and they had the freedom to kind of build on what they wanted also, right? Somebody incubated their interest and their talent to take it forward, which I think is the only difference between a Stanford and any other university out there. And the other difference is Stanford has a basic screening process. So they screen out, the probability of finding a driven individual is a lot higher at a Stanford than it is at, let's say, a lovely professional university, because Stanford did have that initial screen and say we want students who have demonstrated some sort of ability before. So they have two advantages. One is they like have a great filter of taking people, and second is they have a lot of money and they are able to provide students all sorts of amenities they could possibly think about.
Super. I think that's a very, very nice way to put it. So now if I had to talk to you about, you did share the fact that, these universities are acting as platforms where you get to explore, you have the best of facilities. So what were your majors and minors when you were at university? How did you choose them? Was there something that you chose which was offbeat from your engineering background? And how did you feel that, actually making that offbeat choice, how did it help you in life generally?
So firstly, we place too much emphasis on degrees. Okay, like it doesn't matter if you have a degree in electrical engineering or a degree in mechanical engineering, because most mechanical engineers nowadays seem to become computer scientists, and most engineers seem to become MBA graduates. So the degree really doesn't matter for nothing. I think what drove me at Stanford was I took everything that I found interesting, and it may not have been the best decision. Like I was literally 3 classes away from Stanford to coming out with 2 degrees and one minor, one class in each thing, and I just didn't want to burden myself with it, so I didn't do it. And I only came out with 1 degree, which was in bachelor's in electrical engineering. But I would take classes in Greek history. I would take classes in design thinking. I would take classes in theater. I would take classes in electrical engineering. I would take classes in wine tasting. That was a class I took. I would take classes in making comic books, and a lot of my class choices, were based on what I thought was interesting, and not on what I thought would help me in my career. And because of that, like today, I think I'm a decently well-rounded individual because of my experiences in college, where I have a vast variety of things to talk about and a vast variety of things to explore, understand, and appreciate, which a lot of people don't have. Um, and it was a little weird for my parents to know that I was studying Greek studies and Egyptian history, because they're like, "Oh, why didn't you just study Indian history?" And I mean, I guess it's just I found it interesting, so I did it, right? And I honestly think that's what college is about. You find something interesting, you do it, because after you graduate from college, you don't have that choice again. You can't do that again. And So, I mean, in short, like what I thought was interesting, I took, and what I didn't think was interesting, I just passed it. I didn't really care about anything else.
Right, right. So, I mean, before we end this conversation today, I mean, like we've been talking about how you pursued various things, varied things. I would like to know from you that how has your education at Stanford and a lot of these varied things that you studied at Stanford, how has that helped you today, with regards to where you are, the kind of company that you're setting up? How has that engineering knowledge helped you? How does it all come together at the end of it?
Uh, you can't quantify it. So I'm sorry, one second. You can't uh, you can't quantify what you learn. Uh, my CGPA wasn't that high, and I seem to be doing. At least I would like to think I seem to be doing a lot better than my peers. Okay, so I'm only saying that because I don't think you can quantify what you learn through an exam, or I don't think you can quantify what you learn through a grade. And it's really stupid also for humans to look back and try to quantify and see, oh, what did I do in the past that helped me today? There's so many factors, you don't know what it was. Maybe it was a random friend you met at university who inspired you. Maybe it was a random professor. Maybe it was a random event. Maybe it was a random textbook, right? That's helping me today. I don't know. I definitely know that it's not my hardcore electrical knowledge that's helping me in life, right? Do I consider all of that useless then? No. Because maybe as a result of learning all of that, I'm able to apply it in ways that I don't understand. Maybe my analytical thinking skills were a lot sharpened when I was understanding basic power electronics, right? I'm not saying I do power electronics on a daily basis, but maybe me learning power electronics enlightened or triggered something in my brain that allows me to take a decision today. So it's very, very hard to go back and see, okay, because I learned this, I can do this today, or because I learned that, I can do this today. That's not how life works, right? I mean, can you? I don't even know how I'm talking right now, right? I can't actively tell you how these words come into my mind. Does that mean I never studied English? I don't know how I can, right? It's a basic. So it's very hard to quantify and say, oh, because I took this course in college and did this, because of that I could come in here and do this. That's someone would be lying to you if they say that's happening. It's a very subtle thing. It's a very subjective thing, and it's also a lot of times it's very subconscious, where you don't know what the impact of that particular class or that impact of a particular professor was on you, and you just seem to apply it, and the only person who can figure it out is an external being who says, wow, you either sound really knowledgeable or this is amazing insight, and you don't even know where you got it from, you just got it.
Yeah. No, I think that's really wonderfully put. And I have to say, Pranav, the clarity with which you have answered the questions today. And I think the perspective that you've shared with each of us is really very interesting. And I think it's going to open the doors of the minds of many who are going to witness this conversation. I mean, your take on education, your take on degrees, your take on what are the skills that are actually essential in life, the way you see your degree and how you put it to use in the future. I think it's really incredible. And it's really something, you're absolutely right when you pointed this out today. It's something that needs to change. The mindset has to change. And definitely what you've shared with us today is a very progressive mindset. And I'm so happy to see and know that somebody who's so progressive and so receptive to change is actually taking the mantle of bringing change in the education space. So, a very big thank you from all of us and from all of our viewers for joining us this evening. It was really an incredible conversation and so many reflections and so many new thoughts to ponder on. Thank you so much for taking out the time and joining us this evening.
Thanks a lot, Kritika. Thanks for having me on this forum too. I mean, it's a privilege to be here.
Thank you so much, and a big thank you to all our viewers for joining us. It's really this encouragement that keeps us going on a weekly basis. So we're going to see you again next Saturday at 5 p.m., where we're going to be talking about the drug wars issue in India, and we'll have a bunch of students who'll be joining us and airing their opinions on the same. We'll see you again next Saturday. Until then, the pandemic is not over. Stay safe and